Hi everyone, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel, Find Your Treasures. Today we're going to be talking about old souls and asking, is my child an old soul? And I'm going to read out a beautiful divine channeled message that I have just channeled this morning on this tree banjo. And I'm also going to share stories about my own children and times when they've done some kind of amazing, extraordinary little things that I've wondered, are they old souls? So let's dive in. So, today I'm going to share with you four stories about my two children and little things that they did or things that happened when they were young, which made me really think, wow, this is a bit extraordinary. And I'm sharing these because you might, as a parent or grandparent, have noticed things that your children have done where it might start you thinking, wow, this is incredible. How did they do this? Or what? How did this happen? So, the first story I'm going to share is about my daughter when she was only about 6 weeks old. And I can remember this so clearly. We were living in the first house that my husband and I were living in when we first got married. And I had been breastfeeding her, nursing her. So she was only a tiny little baby. And my husband was away at work. And as I was holding her here, I just finished nursing her and she drifted off to sleep and she was asleep on my shoulder. And then as she was asleep, I assume she was dreaming, she lifted back her head and had her eyes closed and did a full laugh, like an adult laugh. So she lifted back her head and went, and then put her head back on me. And I remember sitting there going, oh my gosh, what just happened? I didn't know if it was possible for babies to laugh, like in a big laugh, like an adult style laugh, a strong laugh. And especially at that time, she was only 6 weeks old. She couldn't even talk yet. So I was very amazed. I remember calling my mum at the time and telling her and being like, what just happened? And she said a beautiful thing. She said, oh, we know she's going to have a wonderful sense of humor. So I thought that was a pretty cool little thing. And then later, when she was about 2, I remember we were in the next house that we lived in, and she was sitting at the kitchen table eating her breakfast. And so she was obviously talking then, but as a 2-year-old, she wasn't, having big, long conversations. And I was in the kitchen. And then as she's sitting at the table, she called out to me and said, she was looking up at the roof. And she said, he can't talk to us, you know. And I said, oh, who, darling? Who are you talking about? And she said, Grandpa. He can't talk to us, but he can hear us. And I said, oh, okay. And then I said to her, shall we wave at him? And she said, hmm. And she looked up at the roof and waved and then just continued to eat her cereal. Now, she was talking about my grandfather who had passed away before she was born. So she had never met him in this life. And again, I was amazed and astonished, and I had that kind of feeling like, what just happened? And I remember calling my sister this time and telling her, like, oh, my daughter just spoke to grandpa. So that was pretty cool. That was amazing. And the next story was about my son when he was probably about 3. 2 or 3. It was at that time, as you know, as parents and grandparents, when they're having their day naps. And a lot of the time, little kids, when they are having their day nap, they'll wake up a little bit grumpy, a little bit out of sorts. Some children don't. They might wake up bright and fresh. But a lot of the time, little kids, when they wake up from their day nap, are kind of like grizzly, a little bit like, whiny kind of sound. And so I could hear my son was upstairs in his little bed, and I went upstairs to check that he was, he was waking up and it was the time for his nap to finish. And when I walked in, I remember it so clearly. He was lying in his little bed and he opened his eyes and looked at me very serenely, calmly, peacefully. And his whole expression, even his complexion, looked very fresh and like angelic and like 100% peaceful and calm. And he just opened his eyes and smiled at me. And I remember saying, oh, wow, hi, honey. Like, did you have a nice nap? And he just said, yes. And then he got up and he walked out and he walked downstairs and we went and found my husband. And I said to him, like, oh, look, honey, to my husband, our son's had a beautiful nap. He's just woken up. And even my husband could see just in our son's expression and his face, he looked like he was somewhere else. He was either still in heaven or he was somewhere where he felt extreme peace and joy. It was just radiating out of his face. And we both sort of said to him, wow, did you pop up to heaven while you were having your nap? And then he was just calm and talking to us, but his eyes were shining so brightly. And then after a little while, as he'd been awake, it kind of wore off and he returned to his, beautiful, normal character, but as a little boy and not this kind of serene presence that he had when he woke up, which was pretty cool. And the fourth story, again with my son, he was probably around 3 and it was bedtime. So I was saying I'd been reading him a story, putting him to bed. And then just before he went to sleep, he said to me, and this story, I can't remember what it was, but it had nothing to do with farming. And then just as he was about to go to sleep, he said to me, I loved being a farmer. And I thought he was talking about, say, imaginary play that he'd been doing elsewhere. So I said, oh, that's nice, honey, you liked being a farmer. And he goes, I loved my animals. They were my best friends. And I said, oh, wow. And I could kind of tell it had this tone to it that maybe he was remembering something. I felt like a different energy. And I said, oh, you loved, that's really good. Did you like being on a farm? Did you have a tractor? And he looked at me almost offended. He said, no, not one of those. We had the big animals pull the things. And I said, oh, like an ox with a plow. And he said, yes. And I had the impression and could feel the energy that he was remembering probably a past life, a very happy one, when he was a farmer and in an era at a time when instead of tractors and mechanical technology, they were still using plows and using big. It got the impression it was an ox. So maybe he was in China or something with a rice field. But it was so beautiful how he was sharing this kind of glimpse of a life that he had had where he was very happy being a farmer. So those are some little stories that I've experienced as a mum, some amazing little moments. There have been plenty of those like that, but those were the 4 stories that really stood out for me to share with you. And I would love to know in the comments, have you had experiences like this? Have you wondered, is my child an old soul? Have they talked about past lives? Or have they shared some really little wise truths or done things that are extraordinary, which made you think, wow, like how did that happen? So yeah, I'd love to hear in the comments if you've experienced that. And now I'm going to read out this beautiful divine channeling message that I just channeled this morning through this beautiful tree banjo in our backyard. And I'll share with you my process. So I asked the question, what is an old soul? Are my children old souls? Because I thought this would be a great topic for us to explore. And then I received this poem, which I'm going to read to you. I wrote it down in a scrapbook and then I went inside and typed it up. So I've got it here to share. So here it goes. What is an old soul? An old soul is a wise soul who has lived on planet Earth many times before. If you're watching this poem being read, more likely than not, you are an old soul as well. In your heart, you will feel a remembrance, a resounding echo that this is true. It might feel like a cymbal crushing or a deep, resounding inner boom. For we lightworkers, starseed parents on Earth, have come many times before in the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It is here that we come to play, learn, and create. It is here that we come to learn the lessons that we pre-make. For when the time comes for humanity to arise on planet Earth, you will hear a trumpet sound, playing a great tune of rebirth. You will feel it in your heart that yes, it is true. I have been here before, and so have you. Many lives we live in this beautiful space, where we once had the freedom to create at a slower pace. On other dimensions in space, creation takes immediate effect. It is instantaneous and rapid and not what you'd expect. So here on Earth, we come to slow down, to grow and learn with our feet on firm ground. You may feel this when you visit different places. A longing, a yearning to return to different ages. For you have lived thousands of lives and more on this beautiful planet. You've experienced all this to experience from the rich array of choices on an offer. You have been it all, from the queen on her throne to the pauper in the street, the squirrel, the wise owl making a nest of its own. Your soul is vast, infinite, and mighty. It is expansive and pure and not limited in any capacity. You aren't limited in what you can be or experience anywhere, whether on this planet or another. For what your soul craves is growth, to expand, not to contract. And the time has come on planet Earth to crush any concrete limitations back. For contraction has been felt on Earth for some time, but now is a time for the Earth to push back. and redefine herself as glorious Mother Earth, strong, independent, and ready for rebirth. For her time has come to ascend in unison with your own experience and awakening. You will arise and remember your truth, that you have come not here merely to survive, you have come to play, to learn and thrive, to express yourself, to create. There is no limit to what you can imagine, to the joy you can feel and partake. As as a people of earth awake from their slumber, a golden age will begin. It will be one like no other. Trumpets will proclaim the beginning of this great age, where freedom abounds and children of all ages will shine, for their destiny is assured. Peace on earth will occur. And that is why, old soul, your starseed children have come to earth, for they know in their hearts that this golden age will arise. And when it does, when the time is quite right, they will rejoice and rise. They will live their lives in quite different ways than you have. They will not need to choose a profession, so to speak. They will walk their own path. They will take each step with wonder and awe at the beauty of the world around them, not to conquer and rule, but to explore. For your children's generation will take great steps in assisting all of humanity to move on, to heal from burdens and regrets. There is nothing to fear as Earth moves through the ages, but take comfort in the surety that it will take place in stages. So take each step through life as a parent or grandparent. Mirror the same starry-eyed wonder as your child does each day. Rejoice in the beauty and magic of Earth, and soon you will find that your own heart will beat with the resounding truth that it is time for humanity to arise and claim its rightful place in the galaxies and stars as a peaceful race who loves one another, where war or famine knows no place. For humanity is destined to proclaim this truth, that it is peaceful and loving and caring above all else. This will take place. Humanity will ascend. And when it does, you will find that joy has no end. Take a deep breath as you parent and grandparent your wise old soul children, for they have come to herald a new age where peace and joy is unbridled. For it will take place, the time will come, and you'll feel immense gratitude and pride that you helped them along. And that was that beautiful message that I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching my video, and thank you for listening to my stories. I hope you enjoyed them, and I really hope you loved that beautiful Divine Channel message that I just read out from Banjo, and I hope something in that helped you to sparkle and shine. And I had a question last week after my last video of why I'm wearing my beautiful sequin sparkly dresses. And that is because my books, my children's books that I have written, Find Your Treasure, My Soul Treasure, and My Mermaid Treasure, are all about helping children find their inner treasures. So I love in my books for children to imagine they have a treasure chest of gemstones and jewels within inside their soul, and each gemstone and jewel represents an inner strength they have. So my illustrations that Alison Mutton has drawn in my books are very sparkly and beautiful and full of jewels, and that's why I love wearing my sparkly dresses with you when I share these messages. Thanks for listening. Bye.